So, quarantine, huh? I've been sewing, and I've been making things, and I made this button front skirt, and I'm really proud of it, and I've been wearing it a lot, and so I kind of wanted to make another one, and I thought I would make a video showing how I made it. Okay, so for this project, you're going to need anywhere from 1 to 2 yards of fabric, less fabric for a less full skirt, more fabric for a more full skirt. I used about 2 yards. And the first thing you're going to want to do is take your waist measurement. This is pretty much the only measurement you're going to need for this project. For your waistband, you're going to use your waist measurement plus 3.5 inches. So for me, at 36.5 inch waist, I had a 40-inch length for my waistband. For the width of your waistband, you're going to take the desired width of your waistband times 2 plus 1 inch. For me, my desired width was 3.5, times 2 gave me 7, and then plus 1 gave me 8. So I ended up with a waistband piece that was 40 inches by 8 inches. After that, you are going to go ahead and cut out your pockets. Hypothetically, you could do this project without pockets, in which case you could just skip this part. But I didn't use a specific pattern, I just freeballed this pattern myself. The most important thing is that they are deep enough and they are wide enough for the widest point of your hand. It's not a fun mistake to make, I've made it before. I have a lovely pinafore with the teeniest, tiniest pockets known to man, and I can barely get my hands in them. They're deep enough, they are just not wide enough. After this, if you want a different length for your skirt, you can go ahead, but I'm going for roughly knee length, which means tearing my fabric in half widthwise. Doing this gave me 2 long strips that were probably, at this point, about 1 3/4 yards in length. I made sure that it was a perfect rectangle before tearing. And aren't those fabric tearing noises just delicious? If you do not have woven fabric, do not tear it, cut it. I was working with quilter's cotton, which means I was able to tear it. After this, set aside one of these 2 pieces. Tear the remaining piece in half. This should give you 2 identical pieces that are half the length of the piece you set aside. The reason that we're doing this is so that you can have symmetrical hip seams on either side of the skirt to put the inseam pockets. And I tried to show you what I was doing here, but I felt like it was a little, visually confusing. So these are your 2 pieces. One of them I've dotted where you're going to tear. You tear it in half, and now you've got 3 pieces. This is how we're going to end up attaching them. Next, you're going to want to take your waistband and lay it flat. Press it if it's wrinkly at all. We're not going to need it for a little bit, but I like to iron all of the seam allowances flat, especially because for this project, it's very important that they are crisp. So first, you're going to want to iron a 1/2 inch on the width on either side. So for me, this meant making my 8-inch width 7 inches. And then you're going to want to press the length in a 1/4 inch, like what I've done here, and then a full inch. So I've got that inch and then that 1/4 inch. This should leave you with your total waist plus 1 inch in length. And then you are going to fold the waistband in half so that it's your desired width and press this. And then we can set the waistband aside. After pressing my waistband, I moved on to making my pockets and hip seams. I'm doing French seam inseam pockets here. That's a mouthful. Try saying that 10 times fast, huh? I have done this a few times before, but I really don't think that I am articulate enough to explain it, especially with my camera situation. I am filming on my phone and my computer, and I do not have a tripod. But I will link to the tutorial that I use. I use this amazing tutorial by Kittenish Behavior. She explains it far better than I could. Essentially why I choose to do the French seam on my pockets and just anything that I can in garment making is because I personally really like having the soft and sturdy finish that a French seam provides by completely sealing away all of the raw edges. And it's only a little bit of extra work, and she explains it really well. So I definitely I encourage you to try it, and I definitely think it's worth doing. Just when you cut out your pocket pieces, make them bigger than you think because you'll need that extra seam allowance. I put my pockets about 3 inches down from the top of my fabric. I do wish that I had put them a tiny bit higher, like half an inch higher, maybe. Those pockets are going in those seams that were the pink lines I had drawn on the diagram from a few minutes ago. After finishing the pockets, you should be left with this nice long rectangle. This is guesswork, but mine is probably about 3.5 yards in length, maybe 4, somewhere in between there. And you're just going to want to go ahead and take the bottom inch of this, or not the bottom inch, the bottom edge of this rectangle, fold it up 1/4 of an inch, sew it down, and then fold it up 1/2 inch and sew it down again to create a rolled hem along the entire bottom edge of the skirt. I chose to press them before running them through my machine. You don't have to. I don't think that this is completely necessary, at least for this step. Most of the time when I say to press something, it is important. After finishing this, you're going to need to take the 2 shorter raw edges of the skirt and fold and press them 1/4 inch and then 1/2 inch to match that same part that we had pressed on the waistband, and then pin the matching edges together on both sides. Don't mess with them after this. Don't suck them up into your ruffles. These are going to be the button placket, and we want them to lay really flat. But now you can begin ruffling. I like to use a fork to do this. You're going to pin your ruffles as you go, good side to good side on your fabric, lining up your raw edges, or in my case, I pushed my skirt edge up just a little bit because the white strip of the selvage was so thick and I didn't want it to show. I'm not gonna lie to you, this is a very imprecise, very finicky technique that took me multiple hours of playing around with. It's just a lot of messing around until it fits the length. I think it looks nice. But gathering is a really good alternative here. It's just, again, make absolutely sure that if you choose to gather or if you choose to ruffle, that you don't suck your plackets up into it. When you stitch the edge, again, make sure that it's good side to good side, and go close to the edge as you can. I did about 1/4 inch. It needs to be on the inside of that 1/2 inch that we pressed, and you will see why this is necessary in just 1 second. After sewing the ruffles on your skirt, you're going to want to go ahead and flip it to the front. What you're going to do when you look at it on the right side facing out is there's your seam, and there's that 1/2 inch where we pressed it. Eventually, it's going to fold down like that, and we're going to top stitch it. But first, you have to make sure here, where the waistband and the skirt line up, where we left that space for the placket, make sure that's completely flat. And what we're going to go ahead and do is from top to bottom, sew a straight line. So you need to make sure as you're running this seam that goes from top to bottom all the way along the length of your skirt on both sides on the placket that you catch that 1/4 inch that is folded underneath. This is incredibly essential. You want to sew far enough into the skirt where when you run your line that you catch the 1/4 inch underneath, and it should create this nice wide border for your placket. And on the inside, you'll have that nice edge with no raw edges exposed or showing. Now you're going to go ahead and fold your waistband in half, and then tuck down and fold over that front edge so we can top stitch it flat. On the front, it should be smooth and flush, and on the inside of the skirt, the waistband should be encapsulating all the raw edges and be equally smooth and flush. I've pinned it here so that before I sewed it so that I can show you what I'm talking about. There's that seam, and there's that top edge that's going to get top stitched down to create a nice flat edge, and then on the inside, all of the raw edges and everything are hidden up underneath the edge of the waistband, and when I sew, it's going to catch all of the layers of fabric. So you're going to start from the top corner of one side of the placket, seal off the folded edge, pivot, stitch along the length of the waistband, pivot again, and sew up the other folded edge. Now, we're so close to the end. You just have to pick out the buttons that you want, and you're going to sew the buttons along the length of one side of the placket, like I did here. Now, on the other side, you are going to make buttonholes. The holes on the waist should be horizontal so that the pull from your waist doesn't cause tension, and the rest of them are vertical. If you have a buttonhole foot for your machine, thank yourself for that amazing purchase, and otherwise, the rest of you can join me in sewing hell and hand edge all the buttons for hours like I did. And then all of your hard work will pay off and you will be done. So, the question is, how did it go? How did mine turn out?